Recording. Okay, here we go. Welcome, everybody. Happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us for the Cooperative Decision-Making webinar for distributed teams with us at RoundSky and Loomio. If you're here for that, you're in the right place. And I'm Rebecca. I'm the communications wizard here at RoundSky. And I'm excited to be here with you all to dive into what it takes to make really effective democratic decision-making in our teams, as well as a couple concrete tools you can put to use after this session. So if you're willing, keep your videos on. It's a nice humanizing way to connect today, and as well as during the breakout. And we'll be keeping people on mute as much as we can because our mics are really good at picking up those background noises. So we'll outline today's content shortly, but first I want to let you know a little bit about our work and who's in the room. So RoundSky, first off, RoundSky is a worker-owned co-op that works with leaders, aspiring leaders, and organizations that value and want to improve their democratic and participatory processes. We do that through the courses, coaching, or in team or company-based trainings, grounded in our collaborative operating system, which we call CoLab. And we'll be pulling from CoLab's tools today to share about this decision-making model you can add to your toolbox. And we've worked with many people and teams on strengthening their decision-making practices and clarifying who makes which decisions. And we also support them in facilitating democratic meetings and other crucial areas for democratic management to set teams up for success in their collective decision-making. It's all kind of connected. And often collaboration and cooperatives get a bad rep for not being efficient, but in lots of ways they're more efficient than traditional and hierarchical businesses and organizations. And part of that is continuously growing together and having a system that allows you to be more efficient. So we'll be discussing that as well. And like I said, I'm Rebecca. I'm the communications wizard here at RoundSky, and what brought me to this work 3.5 years ago was the importance of processes and structures to get us where we want to be versus where we are. And I'm excited to be a part of this conversation today because I found that this decision-making process has been really helpful for me in many different types of spaces and effectively bringing in different perspectives in the room, and also helping us move forward so we don't get stuck in deliberation. It's important, but we need to be able to keep going. So I'll pass the mic now to my coworker, Cecile, to share about herself.
Hi, everyone. It's delightful to see you all. I'm Cecile, one of the co-founders of RoundSky Solutions, and I live near Montpelier, Vermont. I've been a social entrepreneur for over 30 years now and have experienced a lot of challenging decision-making. So much that I was inspired to take up a deep dive into organizational and individual development in search of an answer. And I synthesized and published this research in a set of processes called CoLab that reliably deliver healthy forms of power in action, including much more fun and effective decision-making. I'll pass it off to John to share a little bit about Loomio.
Thanks. Kia ora koutou. Hello, everyone from Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand. And Loomio is a worker-owned co-op that produces and supports the online collaboration tool, also known as Loomio. We envision a world where everyone can participate in the decisions that affect their lives. And we believe that collaboration can feel great and achieve better outcomes with less time and effort. So Loomio as a tool supports people to start and hold conversations that lead to clear outcomes. So you get the best of collaboration, effectiveness, and efficiency. People use Loomio for a lot of different things: governance, collaboration, engagement in their companies, nonprofits, government agencies, boards, trusts, and more. And my personal focus at Loomio is group success. So again, I am John, and I leverage my decade of experience in collaborative group process, including my years of experience organizing with these folks in Spiral, to support thousands of groups using Loomio around the world to better achieve their purpose. Now I'll pass back to Rebecca to bring us into the agenda for this workshop.
Great. So I'll be talking just to kind of get us in this space together, move to logistics so you know how to participate. If you have any questions or to answer our questions, you can type them in the chat box. which you'll find in the toolbar, which is a speaking bubble. And you can click to introduce yourself to all attendees if you'd like, say who you are, where you're from, and perhaps Cecile or John will say hello so you get a little ping. And we'll take clarifying questions at the end as needed throughout the workshop, and we'll leave a lot of time for questions at the end. So if you have something burning, feel free to just put it in the chat box, and I'll have a log of it myself so we can come back to it. And if you're having some tech issues or you have some questions you'd like to ask privately, feel free to message. You can go on that little drop box that says all attendees when you're chatting, and you can go directly to me, roundsky-Rebecca, and I'm happy to help you through any tech issues or anything that's coming up for you. And this workshop is currently being recorded and will be shared with you along with all the other people who registered for this call today, and with the resources after this meeting sometime in the next day or so. And like I said earlier, we'll be keeping everyone on mute. Thank you for doing that. And so we can make sure we can hear the speakers. So with that, before we launch into the content of the webinar, I wanted to invite those of you on the call to share a word or a short phrase that represents your experience with collective decision making. And I'm going to use this tool called a whiteboard, which you should be able to see now. And if you would be willing, I see some nods and you can see it. If you'd be willing, there is a tool area on the top of your screen where you can share your experience with collective decision making. And Cecile, I know you can see it, so if you'd like to give some more direction, that would be helpful.
Yeah, great. So if you're looking at that whiteboard and you want to write on it, take your cursor up to the top of the screen, and next to where you are viewing Round Sky's screen, you'll see View Options. Click that down arrow. And second from the bottom is Annotate. Click on Annotate, and then a new toolbar should pop up. You have to click on Text or Draw, whatever you want to do, and then put your cursor over the whiteboard and start typing.
And that question is, what is your experience with cooperative decision making, which I'm placing on here now. So you can write like whoever is doing that now, or you can click text. So it's draw or text, whatever is easiest for you.
And one more quick thing, you have to check out, you have to click out of the text box in order for it to show up on our screen collectively.
Yes, thank you. So some people said voices, policy governance and nonprofit board, majority rule, that's your specific way. Does voting count? Yes, it does. Someone said frustrating, hard but worth it, empowering. I like the idea of it, but we don't have a lot of practice. There's a squiggly that maybe represents the feeling of collective decision making. It's hard to put that into words. And we use a room version of Loomio, which we call Roomio. Okay, cheerleading and or clowning helps process. There might be structures we define together, but it's hard to get everyone and make it work. Get it to everyone and make it work. Apathy, not always practice. Sounds great, but I don't have much experience. It's messy. People drop out. New to the topic. We do it every day. Easy for people to opt out. So a lot of different experiences with decision making. Some positive, some frustrating or challenging. Need more info. Powerful democracy in practice. Great. I think this is really helpful to get a picture of what our collective experience is in some ways, what we've just built together. And somebody in the chat box said, this graphic itself is a collective decision making. A little unstructured, but within a framework here in this box. So thanks for sharing that. If you have other ideas that come up, feel free to put them in the chat box. And I'll save this and I'll share it with you all afterward. So I'm going to close that for now. And I'm going to pass it to Cecile now, who's going to share what's next and some content with you all.
Yeah, so decision making, here we go. Collective and cooperative decision making. It is definitely a different animal than top-down or autocratic decision making. So let's start though by taking a look at the big picture of decision making with questions like, what is decision making actually, and why does collaborative decision making matter, and who makes what decisions? And then how do we make collective decisions efficiently? So for that, we'll dig into integrative consent in detail. And since we also have this opportunity with John being here, we'll demo how integrative consent works on the Loomio platform. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A for everyone. And we'll be sending out our resources after the call with you today, like next actions and other opportunities. So with that, let's dig into this big picture. I think it's really helpful to take a 50,000-foot view and ask ourselves, what is decision making? And in short, it's really the process, whatever process by which we get to clarity on what we're going to do. And that's true for whether it's an individual decision or collective decision. And there are all kinds of different ways of making decisions, but this is the basic need that it's filling, is our need for action. We need to know where to go. We may have options. We need to decide. And so in this webinar, we're primarily focusing on the details of one form of collective decision-making called integrative consent that reliably improves the quality of decision-making in organizations. And we teach this in our cooperative leadership training program and see it have immediate positive effects for the teams that put it into place. So let's take a moment with why collaborative decision-making is important. And I am making that distinction between collaborative forms of decision-making and other kinds. So there really are a lot of ways of making decisions, from conventional top-down to voting, to the advice process, to consensus. There are a lot of options out there. And just to sort of explore this question, why collective decision-making is important, one of the problems with top-down decision-making is that it can have some really negative impacts. One is that the lack of input from people whose lives are impacted by the decisions can lead to harmful and ineffective actions, can lead to trouble with disengagement and poor implementation. If you've not been a part of it, it's a lot harder to get yourself excited for a decision that A, you think is a bad decision, and B, you had no voice in, especially if it impacts you or your communities, your teams. And another reason is that it can have a big down pressing effect on our ability to adjust our direction based on incoming information or changing conditions. So collaborative decision-making itself really helps us build engagement and buy-in. It creates that responsiveness when used throughout an organization. So we get more agile as an organization, more able to adapt, and we can actually deliver better decisions because we've included more perspectives. We've taken more perspectives that are relevant to the conversation into account. There are also, of course, issues with collective decision-making. As we've noticed on the whiteboard activity, some of those were downsides to collective decision-making. And we've discovered through our research and application that a lot of those can be ameliorated through a more effective collective decision-making process. And so, yeah, we can work around some of those decisions that take a really long time to be made, and decision-making processes that leave people feeling confused and more likely then to opt out of it and unable to meaningfully participate. Another really important one is that sometimes we get these loud personalities that can take up a lot of space in our conversations collectively. And so having clear processes that enables us to naturally and neutrally redirect their energies is very helpful. So in a collaborative work environment of a self-organizing team, we having this clear and rapid means of making decisions, including knowing who has authority for what decisions, is paramount to more effectiveness. Some of the common challenges we've mentioned already, but there's a few more in which not really knowing whose decision it is can have a really big impact. It can drive inefficiency by then sort of compensating for that by trying to get everyone in the room all the time to make decisions together. Trying to get everyone to participate together is really inefficient, usually. Also, not knowing who is accountable for which decisions can slow things down, and then sort of intermittently using collective decision making can add to that confusion of, well, when do we use it, when don't we? And then we've just got the basic frustration of decision making that can take too long and get derailed in these many different ways. And so in CoLab, we've developed a simple rubric that really helps to answer this question of who makes which decisions, which is, if it's your work, you get to decide. Now, there's a great deal more to unpack about the mechanics of who makes what decisions and how that plays out in real life. And we dive into these processes that clarify who has the power to make which decisions in our cooperative leadership training that we mentioned earlier. One of the next pieces that teams almost always run into is, what are we making decisions about? So key piece to effective and efficient decision making is knowing when we need that decision making together and when we don't. And in CoLab, we've developed a simple distinction that is useful in clarifying this question, and that is leaning into make a distinction about what the output of a particular agenda item under discussion might be. In other words, are we creating a new pattern together? Are we coming up with a new project that we might want to work on? Or is this something to do with a personal issue, either interpersonal tension or perhaps a personal development issue? So let's take a moment just with this distinction, because I see this change team process, team collective decision-making quite rapidly. Briefly, a pattern is something that's going to last over time until changed. For example, a new policy, a role with a new accountability. And that's different than a project that has a defined beginning and a defined end, such as workshop delivered, or and a person output, conversely, has to do with resolving emotional conflict, or perhaps it's input for an individual's personal development. An example might be Jane to improve her task tracking system. That would be personal development. Patterns really benefit from being collectively determined, whereas projects, those one-off things, once we have roles clear, do not really need that decision-making process to be applied to them. Let me give you a concrete example. When we as a team collectively decided that Rebecca's role as our communications wizard included the authority for creating and delivering on a marketing plan, then when we're exploring what's on the horizon, Rebecca can let us know that she's planning to do a decision-making workshop with Loomio, and that becomes a project that she can report on going forward. But it doesn't require all of us to consent to that particular workshop, though she may choose to solicit our input, somewhat like the advice process, for those of you familiar with that, because she knows it might be invaluable to the success of her decision. But we don't need to go back and then consent uniquely on each project that Rebecca takes on. So we have some useful frameworks and facilitation tools for making this happen in our teams through these clear communicating and meeting processes. And that brings us to integrative consent. So let's take a moment with this set of tools. And on the screen, you'll see a step-by-step process. This is one of the tools we'll be emailing out to you after we're done. So integrative consent was synthesized from multiple collective processes to produce a best practice for decisions as a team. And one of the ideas to remember with CoLab and integrative consent is that any decision can be revisited at any time, meaning that we are only making decisions that are good enough for now. And let's walk through each step. So first step is propose, and we want to get to a written proposal. And we do that through either proposal surfacing, which is often open discussion, brainstorming format, or we can ask the person who brought the item forward if they have a proposal. And if they do, we can start with that. The next step is questions and comments. And it's ideal to do this as a round. It will take less time if you do it as a round. And the invitation is to ask any clarifying questions, share any points of information, make any other desired responses, including better ideas you have for the idea on the table, and any potential objections that you might have to the proposal. These are during the questions and comments, we want our proposer to be listening carefully, because as we move into the third step, amend, that's when our proposer is going to change their proposal based on the input they've received. Now, there's no obligation for them to integrate everything or try to please people. They're doing a service on behalf of the team to integrate and change what they think is going to be best for the team. And then we move into our fourth and final round, which is integrate. And integration happens also by a round. We ask for objections. Objections are what might cause harm to the organization if we pass this proposal as it is. So really, we want to look for that thing that's going to create disruption or a problem for our team. And objections are not a reason I don't personally like the proposal. They are not also a better idea about how to do X, Y, or Z, or based on predictive concern, for which we have no current data. And so as we surface our tensions, after that, we're going to validate our objections. And from there, once an objection has been validated, which I'll talk about more in just a moment, then we integrate that objection via open discussion to create a new proposal or a variation on that proposal that no longer causes harm. And we continue until no further objections remain. At that point, we have a past new shared agreement about whatever it might be that our team needs in the moment. So with that basic introduction to integrative consent, I'll just say that it's the integration round where things usually get interesting for a team. And so once we hit that round, this is where we take that proposal that is born of a coworker's tension about something in our team that could be better, and we're creating a workable solution for our team to move forward with. If there are objections, there's a few tips I want to offer you all. First thing is, as a facilitator, you want to choose the objection you want to start with and then ask your objector what is the harm it will cause to the team or organization. And you can validate objections by asking simple questions like, is this an individual dislike without a basis in collective harm? Or is this just a better way of moving this forward? Or is this objective speculation without supporting evidence? If your objector answers yes to any of the above, then their objection is not valid and therefore does not require integration, although it might highlight a new tension, which should be placed on the agenda for processing at a later date. If the objection is valid, the next step for you as the facilitator is to invite that solution. And you can do that by asking your objector first, if you'd like, if they have one. Often objectors do have a sense of what they think needs to change. Sometimes we don't. And if not, then you move to open discussion to surface that integration from the whole team. You're shooting really for a proposal that is safe to try, knowing that we can revisit this decision if we need to. And as you walk through each of the objections, the arbiters of that objection are the original tension holder and the objector, with the rest of the team offering input, ideas, and brainstorming. This process, once learned by a team, can be done quite rapidly. I've seen proposals passed in under 2 minutes. And it's important that once a decision is passed, that it's recorded in a repository so that you as a team have a place for it. Now, Loomio does a great job of that for us, so that's one of the things we get to see a little bit later on in our time here together today. But before we do that, we thought that a demo might be a great place to continue the conversation, give you all a sense of how this flows in action.
Great. Thanks, Cecile. So That's a lot of information, and like Cecile said, we're about to just demo this because it can be a little bit easier to understand the process as you see it go on, and then you can come with questions to us. So I'm going to change the screen a little bit here to this is our agenda, and we're just going to skip right to the items, the tensions. And I've already placed this on here, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead. Cecile's going to facilitate us through this. So I'm going to pass it to you, Cecile, to facilitate.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So Rebecca, since this is your tension, please give us just a little bit of information about what this is for you.
Great. So my tension here is relationship between Round Sky and Loomio, and it's more of an idea. So my tension's around the excitement that we've received and we've felt at Round Sky when we've offered workshops in the past on cooperative decision making and also this webinar, and I want to see where it can go. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and I already have a proposal, and I'm going to share it here on the screen. I already have it, so I'm going to copy and paste it into the agenda. I'm ready for action.
Yeah, while Rebecca's doing that, I'm just going to highlight that step number 1. Remember, we could do proposal surfacing, or the proposer might have a proposal. Rebecca has a proposal, so she has gotten us through step 1 by offering that proposal.
And that is that Round Sky and Loomio shall offer a cooperative decision-making workshop every summer for the next 5 years to see how it kind of goes over time. So I'll put that out there.
Thank you. All right, so we're ready for the next round, questions and comments. And John, I will put you up first.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear about this proposal. I feel similar. It's been great working with you two, particularly Rebecca and Cecile. So I guess I was curious who would be on the delivery team, since we're talking about Round Sky and Loomio.
Mm-hmm. So I thought about this a little bit. I imagine it would probably stay the same, but for each time we may decide to switch it up, but we would decide beforehand who would deliver before the workshop, maybe like 6 months out. Just the teams would come together and talk about who was excited about it and whose role was covering that kind of position at the time.
Thanks. John, anything else? All right, I'll go next. So I'm really excited about this. It's also been really wonderful working with you, John, and the rest of the team there at Loomio, and would love to continue to offer this work to the world, because I think it's really important, especially for our current day and age. So I'm super excited about this. Thanks for bringing the proposal forward, Rebecca. And I think my question is, should we vary the content a little more? Maybe talk about decision making in various sort of contexts or something. I don't know, but what do you think, Rebecca?
We could do that. I like the broad kind of stroke of just anybody who's interested in collaborative decision making, but we could do a survey around who's been interested and see what the specific struggles are, maybe dive in even deeper, and maybe even dive into how to really do it on Loomio with precision. So that is an option. I think for the proposal, I'll leave it open, but that's a good question.
Yeah, thank you. And you're naturally moving into amendments. We'll come back to you. And is any other clarifications or amendments that you want to make?
At this time, I think I feel pretty clear on it. And so someone in the chat box had a question: summer in New Zealand or summer in Vermont, or both? I was imagining summer in Vermont. Maybe we should have two summers. That's a good question. And but once a year at this point. And I don't have any other amendments.
That's awesome. 2 summers. I can wrap my head around that. All right. Great. Well, thank you for the amendment, Rebecca. And now we're ready for that step 4, that integration round. And so I'm going to surface objections. And John, I'll put you up first again.
Oh, this probably should have just been a comment, because it could have been an easy amendment probably. But So the way that the Loomio co-op does planning, we wouldn't commit to something for like 5 summers. We work a bit more iteratively. So like kind of with our policies or like our way of working, yeah, I have an objection about agreeing to 5. We could agree to 1 would be simpler, and then see how we go from there. Even if the intention is like, yeah, we want a long-term working relationship with y'all.
Nice. Thanks, John. And let me just see if we have any other objections. We're going to surface all those objections first, and then we'll go back and integrate them. And I don't have any objections at the moment. Rebecca, do you have any objections?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay, so we have John's objection. And John, I would love to hear if you could say just a little bit more about what's the harm that might come from committing to, say, a long-term project like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the agreement that our team has made, it's how one of the key rhythms around which we structure our work. So it would be damaging for how we operate as a team in the way that we set up our strategy. And ultimately, yeah, the partnership in that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's just validate that objection here together. It doesn't sound like this is a personal like or dislike of yours. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Yep. It's also not a better idea necessarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nor is it based on predictive concern, because it sounds like you guys have sorted this out through years of working together.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So that would make it a valid objection in this context. So let's try to integrate it. And I'll just open it up for discussion. John, if you have anything you would like to offer that would help, Rebecca too.
My amendment suggestion would be we commit to 1 and commit to reviewing and basically doing a retrospective where we set the next one or say, oh, maybe it didn't work as well as we thought, but likely. Okay. All right, cool. Now let's look towards next year.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Commit to Vermont summer.
Awesome. Great. So Rebecca, as our scribe, have you been able to integrate that into the text on our screen?
Let's see. My amendment, that makes sense. So for the next summer, I'll put Vermont here for clarity and to see where that takes us.
Nice. Okay, super. So John, how are we doing on integrating your objection?
Great.
Excellent. All right. Well, anytime we integrate an objection, we might create more. So let's do a final objection round, just popcorn style. If you have an objection, speak up. And I'm realizing I have an objection. My objection is I think we might be missing an opportunity here to commit to this sort of longer term vision for our work together. That if we're just doing a year at a time, I think we might think small in that. And so yes. So if that's an objection, any objections from John or Rebecca at this point?
No.
Okay, so then let's see if this is a valid objection. It's not a personal like or dislike. It's not necessarily a better idea, but I think it might be based on predictive concern, because I don't really know how this is going to play out. It might play out fine, and since we haven't worked together in the past that much, who knows? So I think this might not be a valid objection, and that we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out.
You think this is safe enough to try for now?
I do think this is safe to try.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Wonderful.
And no objections.
Oh, no objections. And our proposal has passed. Thank you so much, Rebecca and John. And there we go.
Awesome. In blue. That's in our agendas. We highlighted for confirmed decisions. It's been clear that we've all decided on this.
Nice.
So that's our little demo for you, and you can expect a workshop next summer. This summer. And we want to give you a chance to just a few minutes here to break out into groups and to discuss what's come up for you, what are the questions you have, and to kind of help each other through this for a moment. We'll take maybe about just a few minutes here, and just to give you or actually, we want to save time. I'm getting some implicit behind the scenes comments on we would like more time for questions at the end because there have been a lot. So we'll just give you like 30 seconds to think about for yourself what stood out to you, what have you noticed, these questions that are on the screen here. How does this compare to your groups? And you can put it in the chat box if you'd like. And then we'll keep going, just kind of give you a moment to digest. So we'll give you 30 seconds there. All right, so we're going to come back now, and Donna's going to lead us through a quick activity just to synthesize what's come up for you. So I'll share a whiteboard here. Oh, this is our old one.
So again, we've got our ability to grab that annotation tool from in the top right, view options, annotate. And I think I saw a lot of really awesome questions, but I'd particularly invite people to stick up on the board. Yeah, what struck you? What did you notice? And how does this compare with your experience in other groups, or starting to think about where you're going to go next with this? Give people just 2 minutes to share what seemed important about what you saw just now. And I'll just start reading out a couple since there's only a few people putting in right now, and then we'll probably just move forward and you can hold the rest of your comments for that question and answer period near the end of the workshop. Limits derailing ego rather than staying focused on shared goal. That's awesome. Systematic and smooth. Taking some of the unlearning it takes some unlearning to let go of ideas of organic ways of decision making or simple conversation. Yeah, I think that's true, and it becomes quite organic. I think with practice, we're taught how to be in dialogue. And so this is kind of, yeah, some unlearning and then relearning, and it gets easy again. Good for focusing on operational proposals, wonder how it works for strategy discussions, clear process to remove perceived barriers, definitely. Everyone was very respectful of other objections. Yeah, respect's a big part of the process. Awesome, so you'll be able to see this as well with the things we'll send out to you. And with that, I'm gonna move us forward to looking at what this looks like on Loomio. But first, I think, you know, the title of this workshop was around distributed teams. And so I really wanted to bring that in. And when I'm saying distributed teams, I'm talking about working across time or space. Teams that are working across time or space, maybe on the spectrum of remote work, juggling time zones, people coming in at different shifts, second shift, third shift, first shift, 24-hour operations. And so when we're talking about distributed teams, you know, something that I've talked with Cecile and Rebecca a lot, and I think we've all come to, is we believe all groups have something to gain by moving some discussions and some decisions online. And so basically, there's a lot of reasons I could say why, what are the benefits of doing that. But the main point is that asynchronous communication can help this process. And when I'm talking about asynchronously, I'm not just talking about doing this on a group chat or a video call or instant messages, but when people can find the messages on their own time. So I want you to see how you can do integrative consent online or asynchronously, so you can start to imagine the benefits. And I'm going to show you a demo of doing it on Loomio. Really quick, I just want to give you a quick bit of context of the Loomio app so that you understand kind of where you are as the demo begins. And so basically, Loomio is, like many discussion forums you might have seen, one of our unique advantages is that we have really refined tools for facilitating engagement and decision making. We've really structured it to make it easy to start and hold conversations that get to action, that get to that clear outcome. And so in Loomio, you have groups that hold everything in one place for a specific set of people. Within those groups, we find threads. So you're going to see a discussion thread, and that's where you go to discuss topics and make decisions in Loomio using facilitation tools, decision tools like the proposal, which kind of visualizes where we're at in the process. This red might be those objections, either before or after they're validated. And then finally, you're able to post an outcome. And so that with that, I'm going to just check as we get started to see if, can you hear that audio? Oops, no, let me reshare really quick. I think I've got to re-hit that setting. Sorry about that. Share computer sound, there we go. All right. One second, technical difficulty. All right, so we're gonna see if this works. I'll look for thumbs from Cecile and Rebecca. Let's try it on Loomio. Let's say you're the proposer this time. You'll start with a new discussion thread. It's best if the title says what you're trying to do. In this case, sponsor the benefit dinner of a local charity. In the context, you'll frame the discussion and decision with relevant details and give people a sense of what the process will be. To guide the members of your group and to make it clear both where we're at and what's been shared and by whom, you'll use Loomio's facilitation tools to move this along. For this consent process, you'll only need the proposal tool. For this step, you'll remove all the voting buttons from this proposal because you're just inviting the group to share questions and comments at this stage. For the questions and comments step, a title like this can help. The text that's written directly under details may also help folks new to the process, but the main thing is to include the proposal text here, or attach it. Next, set a sensible duration within which people can participate. Loomio will again alert the group 24 hours before this closes, so it might be ideal to align that notification with the time you think they'll be able to quickly respond. Now, you'll typically want to invite everyone from your group, but you can also push notifications to just select people if you wish. Everyone sees this page where people can leave comments which, by the way, leave a nice record you can reference down the road. Looks like Mary and MJ responded right away, and MJ left a nice suggestion to donate more. Let's say this sounds great to you, so you can immediately incorporate this as we move into the next step, amendment. Once you've amended the proposal, you'll use the updated copy, the amended proposal's text, so that you can move into the last step of integration, which begins by calling for any objections. To do that, you'll start a new proposal and, this time, use the consent, abstain, objection voting options. Again, include the amended proposal and make sure version 2 is also clearly labeled in the title. A good title might look like this, letting people know how to best participate and where you're at in the process. Again, all your group members come to this page. People will be able to vote and leave a reason, a short comment explaining their position. People can change their votes until the proposal duration is over and it closes, allowing people to change their minds in response to new information or further thinking. You can see Mary's done good work of validating her objection already. Clearly there is evident risk in donating to a group that has big bad press right now. However, let's imagine Mary's objection was not valid. Anyone in the group, maybe you or the facilitator, could invite her to change her vote. This way, you'll have a quick view of whose objections still need to be integrated. And ultimately, you'll have a clear and accurate record how things ended. You can expect that not everyone will be writing such clear reasons and helping the process along like Mary is doing here. But luckily, you can just have a conversation with your group members here in this thread so everyone learns. Or you can contact an individual more privately. So let's work to integrate this objection. Mary's already invited an open discussion, and she doesn't have a clear suggestion as to how to integrate her concern. Oh, wow, wouldn't you know it? MJ is coming back with great and very fortunate way to integrate this. We'll just fund another charity doing the exact same thing. So you'll start a new proposal so that everyone is clear on what their vote means, what the outcome will be if they consent. Making it really clear by naming it version 3 again, and you'll repeat the step as necessary if more objections come in for amended versions as you go. The final step is to share an outcome, to record your decision and let people know what's going to happen next. Many groups like to use this opportunity to communicate and record who's responsible for what. Notify them or your whole group. So now you can use Loomio to see how you arrived at the decision, all recorded in one place. The navigation icons here help you quickly return to key events. And that's it, outcome achieved. Let's try it on Loomio. Round 2.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, John. It's great to see just the multiple ways that this can show up. There's just so many facets of in-person and then asynchronous decision making, and Loomio is a really great tool for that. Is there anything else you want to share before we move to questions and from our people?
Yeah, there's just one question in here of, is it accessible online? Absolutely. You can find it through Loomio's Medium. We've got a great article. Actually, sorry, it's actually on Round Sky's blog, as well as our help manual. We've got a great guide about consent process that we've developed with Round Sky. So that video, as well as a much longer video that has a lot of the nuance from this workshop. And one tiny question I'll just take now, just before we move into a broader question and answer period. I was asked in private if the amended proposal is a new proposal, and the answer is yes. It's unless you're like making a grammar change or something like that, it makes it really clear, like, great, here was version 1 of that proposal, here's version 2, so people know what they're voting on, which helps create the visual and also helps people learn how the process works. So they see, oh, I see how you amended it. And so you kind of can distribute the capacity to run these decision processes around your group because people can look at, oh, how did Matt do that before? Oh, I see he ran the amendment, and it just makes it simple.
Awesome, thanks. That is easy one to answer in some ways, like easy win, quick. So we have so many questions, and I've taken them all down and kind of organized them, and you have a lot of overlapping questions. Some people ask me in private also. So we probably won't be able to get to all of them, but we'll do our best to get to these bigger overarching ones and the specifics, and we'll see where that gets us. So one question that people had was, I'll just say it, the main question I have is related to the integration, and is the goal to deal with every objection? And on the same line, what if two valid objections are opposite? Cecile, would you mind sharing your thoughts on that? You're on mute.
Thank you. Nice question. So yeah, in general, the goal is to deal with every objection. The thing about learning this process is that folks will over time integrate their own understanding of what an objection is and how that might be different than a concern, or how that might be different than just their own personal discomfort in the moment. And so we'll get better and better quality objections over time as we practice. But even starting from the beginning, the benefit of integrating every objection is that we then have that full input from the team and full buy-in from everyone, that this proposal is best that we can see is not going to cause harm to our team or our organization, that it's safe to try for now. And so in terms of the two valid objections that are opposite, I've never actually seen that in action. So I think that it's possible. My experience is that we might have two objections that are similar to each other, and that starting with one often resolves the other one. And if there is anything remaining from that second one that's very closely related, then we can integrate that as well. But in general, this whole process really encourages cooperation. It really builds that, as opposed to the oppositional nature of voting, and how people can sort of get into this really argumentative space of like, no, I'm right. No, you're, back and forth like that. And so I've not seen sort of a combative spirit come out of the objection round, just because of how the whole process is stacked.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to kind of highlight something, that an objection is something that's going to cause the organization harm, or somebody within the organization harm, to try for now. So when we're thinking about harm, what's going to cause harm to us, then the opposite objections, it's a little bit tricky to say that they're opposite, because they might be two different objections that see harm that's going to happen. And the hope is to just try, like, we're going to figure something out, and we get quick enough at this that we can always come back to this decision if it's not working for us. So being able to think quickly on our feet and to change the decisions that we didn't realize actually, now that we have more information that we tried it, isn't going to work, we can be agile and shift our direction at any moment, which anything can happen, right? Internally and externally, the environment is things happen quickly. Hopefully that answers your question. John, did you want to add something?
I was going to take the next question, if you don't
yes,
mind. Yes, we've got one. I just can see that I have a group of very passionate people who may or may not be able to simplify their objections to the degree they acknowledge it does not harm the organization. Are there strategies to navigate through these passions? And I'd be curious of Cecile's answer, but one of the things that comes to mind for me is also this other question: can one person really be the objector and the validator? I think, as you move forward with more collaborative, less hierarchical ways of working, it's increasingly needed for everybody to become a facilitator in their own way, that we're all facilitating to some degree, even though we name some of these roles to help us along and reduce the burden of everybody wearing a redundant hat maybe. And one of the things that can help is, one, practices of mindfulness, actually, taking a moment, giving people time to process it in the moment, and just like really think like, if I think about what harm is for it, and if I maybe separate myself from this issue a little bit, take the ego out of it, as somebody else mentioned, how do I feel about this? And this is actually one of the things that asynchronous communication is really good for. I mean, the old adage is sleep on it. And so that's one thing that we've discovered with Loomio. We've even had comments from customers of like, it's less shouty, like Facebook and these other platforms. Is like, we've created kind of a safe space online for people to discuss, and it gives you time to, one, take 5-10 minutes to craft your message, and you can even edit it. And you can also, think about it over time, and maybe you have a week to respond, especially if it's a contentious issue or something really close to the heart.
Anything you'd like to add, Cecile?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I just want to acknowledge that the passion is really welcome in this process. That it's not necessarily a problem, and that the key to working with it, though, is to have those clear structures, especially around validating those objections. And one of the key bits, and we don't have time to get into this fully in this shorter workshop, but we do in other spaces, is how to do that validating with your objector. And the simple rule to keep in mind is that it's the facilitator's job to ask the questions, not to make the determination. It's the objector's job to make that determination. So in a sense, you're coaching that person to identify whether or not their objection is that personal dislike, that better idea, or based on predictive concern for which they don't have any current data. And that helps, because then the person's sort of they're workshopping their own passion into a place of like, yeah, actually this will cause harm, or no, actually it doesn't, but I know I have someplace else to raise my tensions if I need to.
Yeah, I think the ability to bring it up in another setting helps people say, okay, if this is not the final say, if this is not in stone, then, and I can always bring it up, then that allows more places to bring up what that important piece that makes their collaboration work is, those passions and those concerns, and the conflict that comes out of that is super fueling for how we should move forward. We have just 2 minutes and there are lots of questions, but we do have to keep going because I want to respect all of your time. We'll try to answer some of these questions via email, although some of these things are best verbalized. So I'll try to send a good email to you all with answers. But I want to give us some time to wrap up. So we're just going to share 3 takeaways that we found through collaborating on this. And I'm going to share my screen real quickly. Share. So one thing that we found was it can be really helpful to just add new tools to your toolbox that you can depend on for yourself. And one of the things about supporting the passion in your group is also having professional development in order to hone in on that and get better as facilitators. It's not just something that people have, you can really practice it. So our first takeaway is to find and use clear and intentional processes to support your leadership and your team's collaboration. And those don't need to be DIY. We already have things figured out. If you want to dive in with us, that's great. Just find something that's clear for you to support you. And I'm going to pass it to John.
And so the other thing that is, we believe that all teams have something to gain from moving some of your decisions and discussions online. And I think just to bounce off of that first point, it's somebody was asking in the chat about how to deal with some decisions happening in person and some online. This is a question distributed teams have. And it's really about those clear processes again, and just naming which decisions and discussions need to happen online, or what part of this process will be happening online. And so one thing that you can do to help you move some of those decisions and discussions online is, as you leave today, I wanted to leave you with this discount code. RoundSky 2020 gets you 25% off most Loomio subscriptions for the first year. and you can try your next deliberation for free on Loomio.org. And the very final point that we want to leave you with is, in these times, you know, there's a lot going on in the world. The innovations that we need call for all hands on deck, and we're stronger together. And so we hope that these are some of the tools that can help you walk the talk. And so, yeah, really thank you all for coming. At one point I had counted the number of countries in the room, which was just like so heartening. I think it was over 10, and it was from every continent. And it, yeah, really exciting to see. So yeah, thank you all for being here. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, and we've got both of our websites there. You'll be receiving this slide deck.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time and your questions and your energy and your commitment to collaborative decision making. Feel free to open your mic and say bye if you'd like.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Bye. Thank you.
Ciao.
Well, now he.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.